I'm afraid you won't believe me, Alero said softly. Try me, Adora replied, her tone gentle but firm. What's going on? Taking a deep breath, Alero began to recount the events of that terrifying night. The face, the hollow eyes, and the constant presence behind the curtains that wouldn't leave her. She told Adora everything, down to the feeling of being watched every time the lights went out. There's something here, Ada, Alero whispered. Something that waits for the darkness. It can't reach me when the light is on, but in the dark, it hides behind those curtains. I felt it night after night, until I couldn't take it anymore. The moment I took the curtains down, it stopped. Adora listened, her face growing paler with each word. She knew Alero wasn't prone to flights of fancy. If her friend was telling her this, there had to be something to it. But without curtains, what stops it from appearing elsewhere in the house? Adora asked cautiously. Alero shook her head. I don't know, but since I took them down, I haven't seen it. It only appeared behind the curtains. I can't explain it, but that's the truth. That night, Adora couldn't shake the eerie feeling that Alero's house, though luxurious, was hiding something far darker. As she finally prepared to leave, she glanced at the large, uncovered windows one last time, a shiver running down her spine. Alero stood by the door, thanking her for coming, but Adora couldn't help but ask one last question. What if it comes back? What will you do? Alero's face tightened, and she looked at the empty windows. If it comes back, she said quietly, I'll know. And I'll be ready. Adora left that night, the weight of Alero's words heavy in her mind. Days turned into weeks, and she heard no news from her friend. Alero continued to live in her curtainless mansion, alone with her secret. But the rumors didn't stop. In fact, they grew. People in the neighborhood started talking about seeing strange reflections in Alero's windows at night. Some claimed to see a shadowy figure standing behind her, staring out into the street. One particularly stormy night, as the city of Lagos was shrouded in rain and wind, something changed. Alero, who had been sitting in her study, noticed a flicker of movement out of the corner of her eye. At first, she dismissed it as a trick of the storm, but then, as she looked toward the window, her heart sank. There, pressed against the glass, was the faint outline of the face. The same face, with hollow eyes, staring at her through the rain-soaked window. Alero froze, her pulse quickening. The lights were still on. How was this possible? The figure wasn't behind curtains. It was at the window itself now, as though it had grown stronger, bolder. For the first time in years, Alero felt the suffocating terror return. As the storm raged outside, Alero slowly backed away from the window, her mind racing. Whatever it was, whatever force had haunted her, it was back. And this time, it wasn't hiding. She knew that the mansion, the wealth, the possessions, all of it meant nothing in the face of this unknown presence. The figure didn't want her house, nor her riches. It wanted something far more valuable, her fear. In the heart of Lagos, Alero's mansion remained curtainless, but now the windows themselves became a portal to something far more sinister than she had ever imagined. Alero's heart raced as she stood frozen before the window, the face lingering like a phantom, unbothered by the rain lashing against the glass. She backed away slowly, her breath shallow. In her panic, she reached for her phone to call Adora but stopped, realizing that no one could help her now. This thing, whatever it was, had returned, and it was stronger than before. The face pressed closer against the window, as though testing the boundary between its world and hers. Alero's pulse thundered in her ears. What had she done wrong? Why had it come back? She had lived in peace for years by removing the curtains, believing she had outwitted it, but clearly that had only bought her time. Determined to regain control of the situation, Alero snapped out of her fear-induced paralysis and rushed through the house, switching on every light. As she moved from room to room, the face followed her, appearing in every window she passed. It was no longer confined to a single spot. Now it was everywhere. Desperation gripped her as she reached the main hall. The house, once her sanctuary, now felt like a prison. The only way out seemed to be leaving, abandoning the mansion altogether. But she had built her life here. Could she just walk away? Thunder cracked loudly outside, shaking the windows. The storm was growing more intense, and the electricity in the air seemed to heighten the malevolent presence inside. Alero stood still for a moment, considering her next move. She couldn't outrun this thing, but perhaps there was another way to fight back. Her mind flashed back to an old woman she had met years ago, Madame Ifeoma, a spiritualist who had helped her cleanse the house when the strange occurrences first began. Alero had dismissed Ifeoma's more serious warnings back then, unwilling to believe that what she was facing was truly supernatural. But now she knew better. Maybe the woman could help again. Maybe this time she could put an end to it once and for all. Without a second thought, Alero grabbed her coat and keys, braving the storm as she dashed out into the night. The rain drenched her within seconds, but she didn't care. All she could think of was getting to Madame Ifeoma's small home on the outskirts of town. The streets were nearly empty, and the storm made driving hazardous, but Alero pushed forward, her fear urging her on. By the time she reached the spiritualist's house, she was soaked and shivering, her nerves on edge. She banged on the door, her urgency palpable. After what felt like an eternity, the door creaked open, and there stood Madame Ifeoma, her eyes sharp despite her age. "You've come back," Madame Ifeoma said knowingly, her voice low. She stepped aside to let Alero in, as though she had been expecting her all along. Alero stumbled inside, barely able to speak. It's back. The face that's everywhere now. I don't know what to do." Madame Ifeoma gestured for Alero to sit by the fire, her movements calm, in stark contrast to the storm raging outside. "I told you before, child," the old woman said, her tone firm but not unkind. "What you saw was no simple apparition. It is a watcher, an ancient spirit bound to that house. It waits in the dark, feeding on fear. You've only kept it at bay, not defeated it." Alero's hands trembled as she held them near the warmth of the fire. "But I removed the curtains, like you said. It stopped appearing for years. Why now?" Madame Ifeoma's eyes narrowed. "Removing the curtains only took away its hiding place, but it never left. It lingered, waiting for the right moment. The watcher grows stronger over time, and it has been waiting patiently. Now, it seeks to step fully into your world." Alero's heart sank. "How do I stop it?" The spiritualist leaned closer, her voice dropping to a whisper. "To face this spirit, you must confront your fear. It thrives on the unknown, the darkness, and the places you try to avoid. You must shine light where there is none." Alero frowned, unsure what that meant. "I've kept the lights on, and it still followed me." Madame Ifeoma shook her head. "Not the physical light. The light of truth. There is something you are not facing, something you've hidden deep within yourself. The watcher mirrors your deepest fears. To banish it, you must bring those fears to the surface and confront them head-on." Alero sat in silence, the weight of the old woman's words pressing down on her. What fear had she been running from? What darkness had she buried?